By the time Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban wrapped up in 2004, it was clear the tone of J.K. Rowling's saga was evolving. The fourth book, The Goblet of Fire, was bigger, darker, and more mature than any of its predecessors. And not to mention, horrifically racist. The Goblet of Fire follows Harry's fourth year at Hogwarts as he's unexpectedly selected to compete in the deadly Triwizard tournament alongside older student champions from Hogwarts and 2 foreign schools.
Mr. Potter has no choice.
Except all the times you broke the rules, Albus.
Stop it!
As Harry navigates dragons, underwater challenges and magical mazes, he stumbles upon a conspiracy that changes everything. This is the film where the stakes become truly life-threatening and the tone of the entire series shifts permanently. The novel had introduced international wizarding culture and making fun of how they speak because silly foreigners, ha ha ha, look at them! A life-threatening tournament and pivotal events that changed the course of the story forever. After the critical acclaim of Prisoner of Azkaban, Alfonso Cuarón was originally slated to come back for this one as well. However, he wasn't able to commit as the quick turnaround between films meant that he was still working on the post-production for the previous one. Well, work quicker!
You idiot!
As such, The Goblet of Fire required a new directorial vision, and for the first time, a PG-13 rating in the US, a signal that the series was growing up with its audience. Initially, Chris Columbus actually considered coming back to the series, but he ended up stepping away from the franchise altogether in order to spend more time with his family. Both M. Night Shyamalan and Peter Jackson were considered to replace Cuarón until Mike Newell was chosen due to the success of his previous films Donnie Brasco and 4 Weddings and a Funeral, as well as his experience working with child actors. He became the first British director in the series, bringing a grounded, character-focused and emotionally raw style to the story. Newell's approach emphasised teenage awkwardness and emotion, realistic school life filled with cliques, dances and hormonal chaos, as well as building tension steadily toward a terrifying climax. Unlike Alfonso Cuarón's artful style, Newell opted for a more grounded, dramatic aesthetic, but retained the magical essence. However, Newell admitted that he hadn't read any of the available books or even seen the previous 3 movies, and it wasn't until Cuarón convinced him otherwise that he finally did so. J.K. Rowling's Goblet of Fire was over 600 pages long with complex subplots involving house elves, Quidditch World Cup politics, and multiple new characters. The studio actually toyed with the idea of splitting the story across 2 movies in order to more faithfully adapt the source material. Such a ridiculous concept.
Piss off.
However, both Newell and screenwriter Steve Clovis actively rejected this idea as they were convinced that they could cut the book down into a sizable length. They even consulted Rowling on the matter, and she gave them her blessing to make as many changes as required so long as they stayed true to the spirit of the novel. Yeah, about that.
Nothing.
Steve Clovis had the unenviable task of condensing the story into a single film, removing subplots like S.P.E.W, which is Hermione's house elf rights campaign, where Hermione gets demonized for trying to free slaves, with exact lines of dialogue such as, yep, this woman wrote this. Yeah, wonder why people think she's a bigot.
Come on, have you? Took you long enough.
Trimming the Quidditch World Cup to focus on key action beats and centering the film on the Triwizard tournament, inter-school rivalry and Voldemort's looming return. The result was a tighter narrative that retained emotional impact, albeit with fewer intricate details from the book, and a lot more boredom. Although the boredom was consistent with the book, this installment required a wave of new characters, and each was cast with remarkable care. When casting pretty boy Cedric Diggory, who was in the 3rd book but not in the 3rd movie, so we're supposed to just buy that this random final year student we've never seen before is a regular character, the producers were split between Robert Pattinson and Henry Cavill. Pattinson ended up getting the role after claiming that he had read all of the available books and that he was good at football and skiing, but he later admitted that he lied about this because he wanted the part that much. Crafty bastard.
Again, obvious.
Which was his breakout role, showing him as noble, kind and charismatic. Years before, he was crap. For the part of Mad-Eye Moody, the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, Sean Bean, Billy Connolly, Ray Winston and Brian Cox were considered before selecting Brendan Gleeson. Gleeson gave the role complexity by design, as the plot later reveals. Additionally, because the character of Voldemort was far more prominent in this film, a new actor needed to be cast, with the producers considering John Malkovich, Mark Strong and even Rowan Atkinson before they selected Ralph Fiennes. However, Fiennes almost turned the role down as he had no knowledge of the books or films and didn't quite understand the script. It wasn't until his sister and her children, who were huge fans of the books, urged him to accept that he was finally convinced. His serpentine, chilling performance became a defining portrayal of cinematic villainy. Katie Leung was introduced as Cho Chang, Harry's first crush, which name just sounds like a racial slur, and one name is from one Asian country and the other name is from a completely different Asian country. Did Rowling just search Asian names? Who let this woman write character names? And her Canadian brother, Lumberjack Mapleface.
Potentially problematic.
David Walliams was offered to play Barty Crouch Sr. before they cast Roger Lloyd Pack, and Miranda Richardson was picked to play Rita Skeeter after the initial choice Rosamund Pike turned the part down because she felt it was too small.
It's not going to work.
Filming ran from May 2004 to March the following year. A Yule Ball was one of the largest practical sets built. It took months of choreography to pull off the intricate group dances. Director Mike Newell encouraged the young cast to embrace their teenage selves. He even physically wrestled one of the Weasley twins, James Phelps, to show how to act out a sibling fight scene. The dragon fight sequence was one of the film's most technically demanding scenes. It was a mix of practical rigs and CG animation, with Daniel Radcliffe strapped to a mechanical gimbal that simulated flying. The underwater scene was filmed in the largest tank in Europe at the time. Radcliffe spent hours underwater, which he later said was one of the most challenging scenes of his entire career. The graveyard scene was shot with an eerie atmosphere and intense visual effects to depict Voldemort's full resurrection, a moment that Rowling had described as pivotal to the series. All three main actors were encouraged to improvise their awkward romantic teenage moments, adding to the film's realism. Composer Patrick Doyle replaced John Williams for this film. Doyle's score leaned darker, more operatic and emotionally intense, particularly for the graveyard scenes in Yule Ball. And Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire was released on November the 18th, 2005, and surprise, surprise, it was another absurd hit. The film grossed $896 million worldwide, beating the likes of Batman Begins, War of the Worlds, and Revenge of the Sith to become the highest grossing film of the year and the 6th highest grossing in the franchise. Reviews from critics were once again positive, praising the cast and the series' continued descent into a darker tone. For its maturation of characters and themes, the intensity of the final act, Fiennes' terrifying portrayal of Voldemort, and the emotional weight of the climax, which was a genuine shock to moviegoers unfamiliar with the books, even though it's foreshadowed in the very first scene of the movie!
They are unforgivable.
But audience reception was more mixed, as many book fans disliked the sheer amount of changes and omissions made to the source material, a criticism that would only get worse as the series continued. Even J.K. Rowling admitted that it was one of the hardest books to adapt, and yet many fans consider it among the most emotionally affecting and thrilling entries in the series. Not too difficult to adapt. The book bored me senseless, and so did most of the movie. It received BAFTA and Academy Award nominations, especially for production design and art direction, and it's considered to be the franchise's coming-of-age moment, a transition from whimsical school life to real-world danger. Introduced Fiennes as Voldemort, establishing the primary antagonist in physical form, launched Robert Pattinson's international career, and set a visual standard for major set pieces like dragons, mazes, and underwater scenes that inspired later fantasy films. But look, are you telling me that Harry and Hermione aren't adorable together? Ship them! Screw Ron! Nobody likes Ron!
Promise you'll write this summer. Both of you.
I won't. You know I won't.
Harry will, won't you?
Yeah, every week.
Much like its predecessor, this one is completely different in tone, style, and story. And not just because the film opens like a damn slasher film. Look at it! Is this a charming film about a wizarding school or a Nightmare on Elm Street? As explained in the previous review, unless you've read the book, you're gonna be a bit lost if you watch part 1, 2, and 3, and then boom! Here we are, have a Quidditch World Cup! Which is also really briefly breezed over despite it taking up a good chunk of the novel. I've also always had an issue with this one's pacing, and it was a problem in the book as well. It's no surprise that Voldemort returns at the end, but the fact that the movie literally opens already revealing him completely ruins the mystery of the film. Sure, we don't see his face, and it is really creepy to see his little baby hands. We get a flashback of him as well. It just completely destroys the surprise at the end, in my opinion. Prisoner of Azkaban had no Voldemort, so surely the best way to really make this a shocking ending is to have another film with barely any mention of the Dark Lord, do your Triwizard tournament like it's a brand new story, and then boom, Voldemort is back. It's completely destroyed when it's obvious for the entire goddamn film. Oh well, at least it took 4 movies before they decided to let Harry stay with someone other than his abusive family. Still never explained in the movies why they did that, mind you. Also, nobody in Hogwarts has apparently allowed a trip to the hairdressers this year for some reason. The special effects of them flying is as great as always. Until Arpats and Co walk through the air like a damn cartoon.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
What the hell is up with Jason Isaacs' voice here?
Well, put it this way. If it rains, you'll be the first to know.
Are you Tim Curry or Richard O'Brien? What the hell are you doing? And who knew Quidditch's World Cup takes place in Pokemon Stadium? It does look awesome to see Quidditch on such a massive spectacle. Oliver Wood would be proud, whatever the hell happened to him. And Colin, where's he? The green screens are still pretty impressive, but why is his face so pale? Why is the brightness on the lens so oversaturated? Turn it down! The cinematography looks great as the whole event gets ransacked, and it's really cool to see the clan attack. Wait, no, I didn't mean that! It's such a dark and intense sequence before the filmmakers continue their quest to hire any actor within the UK by picking up Trigger from Only Fools and Horses. And Doctor Who. No idea what the hell he's doing with his face, but it's Doctor Who.
Hogwarts has been chosen to host a legendary event. Ah, yes, I'm a wizard. I do magic and stuff, I guess. Abracadabra.
Silence!
I am Dumbledore, I think. Hocus pocus. Shiver me timbers.
He's so crap! Although I will admit that Michael Gambon does do a really good job hyping up the Triwizard tournament as such a dangerous event. So what the hell do you continue to put children through it, you sicko? And the foreshadowing in these films continue to be lazy and unsubtle.
What Sonny's drinking, do you suppose?
I don't know, but I don't think it's pumpkin juice.
It'd be brilliant, wouldn't it?
Yeah, rather you than me.
Although if this is the first day of school, how on earth has everyone managed to perfectly choreograph all of these sequences? The kids are all much better actors in this one, which is great to see.
He's back! He's back! Voldemort's back!
Yeah, for the most part. Mad-Eye Moody is hilarious and a great addition to the characters. He's brilliant, but I think Maggie Smith's reaction makes it even funnier.
What are you doing?
Teaching.
Is that a student?
Technically, it's a ferret.
He's just an arsehole, completely tormenting all of the students. It's great. It's an awesome moment as he points out that Harry is the only person to ever stop the killing curse. Despite my issues with this film, it does have a lot of really great moments. Although everyone said it, why didn't just Voldemort pick up the baby and chuck him out the window? You don't need magic to kill a baby, dude. And it is a really huge deal when Harry's name is revealed to have been put in the
Goblet of Fire.
Jokes aside, I get why Dumbledore says the line is such a neurotic mess in this one due to the severity of the situation. But it's how drastically different it is from the book's description that makes it so funny. I just can't get over the fact that Dumbledore doesn't even attempt to find a loophole. Just, yes, this 13-year-old boy must fight a dragon with his bare hands and then dive into a lake with drowning students that could actually drown and die even though they're not in the tournament, so they're complete innocents. What kind of school is this?
I didn't put my name in that cup. I don't want eternal glory. I just want to be...
Weird Al Yankovic. Some of the new characters don't work as well. Rita Skeeter is beyond irritating.
Me, myself, and I want to know. Not to mention my rabid readers.
And apparently a paedophile.
This is cozy.
What is wrong with this franchise? Sirius's cameo is pretty good with some decent visual effects as they discuss the
Goblet of Fire.
because Gary Oldman was too busy filming Batman. And he also builds up the tournament really well as this dangerous event. It does have some really dark visuals, but my main issue with the movie is that a lot of it is just killing time before each trial of the tournament. Harry meets a girl and she only has like 2 scenes in the entire film. She's going to be the love interest in the next one, but she's barely even in this. Yeah, they're in love. And again, her name is Cho Chang. Next, we're going to write a black character called Shacklebolt or a trans character called Sir Rona.
That's rubbish!
Then we have Hagrid getting a love story, which was even more dragged out in the book, even including a racist subplot regarding his heritage as a half-giant. That last part actually seems interesting, but it's not touched upon here. Hagrid was always more interesting when he was mysterious, so this just works to pad out time. In fact, this movie cuts out a lot of subplots from the book, even more so than the previous 3, such as the aforementioned Society for Elf Rights, Barty Crouch's house elf getting blamed for setting off the Dark Mark, the Irish beating the Bulgarians at the World Cup, Rita Skeeter eavesdropping on the students by disguising herself as a beetle. Wait, what? Fred and George placing a bet on Harry to win the tournament, Crouch Jr.'s escape from Azkaban, and Sirius going into hiding near the school. Now, in some ways, I do think this makes sense, as there's no way you could cram all of that into one movie, even with a 2.5-hour runtime. But the problem with that is that the majority of the supporting cast just don't really have a lot to do. Because they've cut so many subplots out, characters like Hagrid, Sirius, Ginny, Snape, McGonagall, and Mr. Weasley haven't really got anything of substance to work with in this one. So any scenes that aren't focused on Harry in the tournament tend to drag in places. It's impressive that they cut so much out from the book because a great deal of the movie is still really slow and just not that interesting. Hermione is waiting for Ron to ask her to a dance, but he doesn't, so she instead goes out with this 42-year-old plumber named Victor, and it makes me very uncomfortable. He is not the same age. FYI, Emma Watson was 14 at the time of filming and the guy who plays Victor was 18. Ron believes that Harry somehow put his own name in the
Goblet of Fire
and is mad at him for some reason, and this takes up so much of the movie's runtime. Him being mad at Harry makes absolutely no sense. I get that teenagers have some petty conflict, but this is just out of nowhere randomly. Although Hermione relaying the messages for them to each other when they're in close proximity is so petty and childish, it is pretty funny. But then Harry gets jealous of Ron experiencing something and not telling him. Are you his boyfriend?
You're a right foul git, you know that.
But I guess at least Ron and Harry make up. Ron and Hermione fall out, she goes out with a 52-year-old paedophile, then expresses how she feels, and they're cool. There's no reconciliation, they're just cool now. Our Pats does a great job as Cedric, and he has some pretty decent chemistry with Daniel Radcliffe. Cedric does come across as a genuinely likeable character. He gives Harry tips on the challenges, and it just makes it that much more tragic when he kicks the bucket. Draco Malfoy is barely in this one again, as the filmmakers continue their evil scheme of removing him entirely from the franchise. But he does get his moment every now and then.
My father and I have a bet, you see. I don't think you're going to last 10 minutes in this tournament. He disagrees. He thinks you won't last 5.
Although the comebacks continue to to suck.
I don't give a damn what your father thinks, Malfoy. He's vile and cruel.
The CGI of the dragon is rather questionable at first, but it does get better. Although the audience don't seem to react too concerned with a 13-year-old boy almost being murdered by a giant killer dragon. One recurring theme in this film is that the audience are completely pointless. Why are they there to watch when they don't even see anything? In the first one, Harry and the dragon end up flying out of the stadium and fighting in the air, although it is a pretty cool moment when Harry gets the egg, but shut up! In the next one, it's all underwater, so everyone has just stood staring at a lake for an hour, and then Harry and Cedric teleport to Tim Burton's back garden for the fight with Voldemort. Why do people flock to watch the event when they're not even watching the event? Anything that's not directly related to the Triwizard tournament is just a drag. Although it does lead to a hilarious reaction from Ron when McGonagall asks him to dance.
Place your right hand on my waist.
What?
Although, if the heads of all the houses are doing this, does this mean that Snape had to teach Malfoy to dance? It is pretty funny watching Ron completely fail at flirting though. What kind of school is this? I also love how Hermione's outfit gets a grand reveal as if Hermione herself was a hideous monster before. She just looks the same! But she's in a dress! And it's still 14, you 75-year-old weirdo!
Actually, we don't really talk at all. Victor's more of a physical being.
Ew! And then Moaning Myrtle hits on Harry. What the hell? This film has 3 instances of an adult hitting on a child. Stop it!
I can touch you now.
Oh, and Neville is back. He's barely in it, but he does get a laugh.
Oh my god! I've killed Harry Potter!
The underwater scenes do look amazing, I will admit. Too bad this doesn't. So up until this point, the movie is just very, very average. There's not a lot to say. It's just boring. It's just not interesting. But then, Voldemort's return looks amazing. But why does he have no shoes on? Ralph Fiennes nails this perfectly and gives one of the greatest villain performances of all time, and it is incredible. You mean the evil father of the evil student who's acted evil and spoke to us evil this entire time is evil? This scene makes the movie so much better. It is incredible.
Your parents would be proud.
Must be nice.
Especially your filthy muggle mother.
What? Lily wasn't a muggle. He doesn't even say muggle born. He specifically calls her a muggle.
Filthy muggle mother.
Lily wasn't a muggle. This is actually in the book as well. Lily wasn't a muggle!
My perfect sister being who she was. Oh, my mother and father were so proud the day she got her letter. We have a witch in the family. Isn't it wonderful?
How did this movie get this wrong? How did J.K. Rowling get this wrong? She wrote the goddamn characters! It's a great piece of foreshadowing and a nice sign of things to come as we get Harry versus Voldemort. But the former clearly isn't ready and only escapes because Jedi... ghosts? How does this work? How are they doing this? It's such an emotional moment as everyone applauds Harry's return before realising the severity, and despite Radcliffe's awful acting, Cedric's father's is gut-wrenching stuff.
Are you alright, Potter?
Well, obviously not! He just faced off the killer of his parents and he just watched his friend die!
I'll be welcomed back like a hero.
Perhaps. Personally, I've never had much time for heroes.
Except for Harry, Ron, Hermione, Snape, Hagrid, Superman. It's an awesome moment when Dumbledore breaks the rules, so he can do it, and tells the kids exactly how Cedric died.
I put you in terrible danger this year, Harry.
Yes, standard. And now the section you've all been waiting for, plot holes! And if it's explained in the book and not in the movies, it doesn't count because they should explain it in both! Considering how many damn ways the wizard world have for transportation, the floo powder, flying cars, and now a port key, the hell is even the point of a broomstick? Or the car?
It'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? 3 years from now when we're old enough to be chosen.
Don't worry, Ron, this won't happen that year for some reason. During the lesson about the unforgivable curses, Moody says that
Scores of witches and wizards claimed that they only did you-know-who's bidding under the influence of the imperious curse. But here's the rub. How do we sort out the liars?
So the implication is that it's almost impossible to tell if someone is under the influence of the curse. But then when Harry sees Crumb in the maze, you can obviously tell that he's being controlled by a curse by his milky-coloured eyes. So way to poop on your own logic, guys! The Weasley twins try a spell to bypass the
Goblet of Fire.
but it backfires and they end up having a fight as a couple of old men, which is pretty funny, especially as Hermione just looks annoyed and tries to study. But when Harry's name goes in, Dumbledore says,
You asked one of the older students to do it for you?
No, sir.
so that would have worked? He didn't consider that a possibility beforehand? So anyone can put anyone's name in. A final year could see Neville Longbottom, they're like, oh, this would be really funny, and then they decide to put his name in for a laugh, and then now Neville, a minor, has to go through this life-endangering tournament. What the hell kind of school is this? What's even more confusing is that Snape wants Harry to compete, but why? I know the idea is to throw the audience off the scent, but we know later that he has to protect him. McGonagall is the only one who actually tries to protect Harry.
Meet me in the Gryffindor common room at 1 o'clock this Saturday night.
You know, when it's the middle of the night and you're in danger of waking someone up. When confronting the dragon, Harry has a wand and takes an eternity to use it. He only tries it when Hermione suggests it, and it doesn't work. Alright, then I guess his broom remembered it exists and reappears. We find out that Mad-Eye Moody isn't the real Mad-Eye Moody. It's actually Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise using a Polyjuice potion. But in this franchise's favourite game of adapting the source material, regardless of what the previous movies in the series did, he also manages to use Mad-Eye Moody's real voice, despite in the second film the host not taking on their voice. Don't worry, they'll change their mind again later. And as much as I love Voldemort in this film, his evil plan doesn't make any sense. But how to break it down? So step 1, bust Barty Crouch Jr. out of Azkaban, which makes no sense considering Sirius was explicitly said to be the first one to do it in the last movie. Step 2, cause some ruckus at the Quidditch World Cup, which relies on none of the Death Eaters getting caught or recognised, which also goes against Voldemort's own goals. Why would he do this pointless display of evil when he wants to remain hidden? Step 3, get rid of Mad-Eye Moody and replace him with Barty Crouch Jr., which relies on Voldemort and Crouch Jr., knowing that Moody would be the defence against the Dark Arts teacher, which technically isn't impossible, but the movie makes no attempt to explain how he got this information. Step 4, perform the Croatius Curse in front of Neville to get him traumatised, which makes sense to some degree as he knows about Neville's past via Bellatrix, but this also relies on Neville being in the lesson and not sick or absent, and relies on him having a particular reaction. Step 5, invite the now traumatised Neville back to your office and give him a book about plants, which relies on Crouch Jr. knowing that Neville is interested in plants. Step 6, put Harry's name in the
Goblet of Fire,
which relies on Crouch Jr. being able to modify the goblet so it spits out one more name than it should, and that Crouch Sr. won't boot him out of the tournament. Step 7, convince Hagrid to tell Harry about the dragons, which is somewhat plausible as Hagrid's love of magical creatures and relationship with Harry would make him inclined to help him. Step 8, ensure that Harry tells Cedric about the dragons so both of them make it through and Cedric will want to be in Harry's debt. Again, partially explicable considering Harry's hero complex, but assuming that Cedric relies on Barty Crouch Jr. having information he can't possibly have. Step 9, teach Harry a spell that will help him beat the dragon, which makes sense as it would help Harry get past the first challenge. Step 10, ensure that Cedric tells Harry about the second task, which relies on Cedric behaving in a way that Crouch Jr. could not have possibly known about. Step 11, ensure that Neville is in the library at the same time as Harry so he can tell him about the gillyweed, which also relies on Step 4 and 5 going exactly as planned, and that Neville would be in the library at the exact same time as Harry. Step 12, kill Crouch Sr. to avoid him learning Fake Moody's real identity. An example of Crouch Jr.'s opportunism, although whether this was planned on Voldemort's part is unclear, unlikely as he wants to remain hidden. Step 13, turn the cup into a portkey to the graveyard, which relies on no one noticing this and is in defiance of his own goals. Why not turn anything into a portkey and getting Harry there ASAP? Step 14, take out the other contestants to make sure that Harry makes it to the cup, which makes sense at face value, but how Barty Crouch Jr. is doing this without any of the Hogwarts staff noticing is anyone's guess, and it relies on him being in multiple places at once. Step 15, bewitch Crumb so that he takes out Harry, which relies on Crumb succeeding, which Barty Crouch Jr. has no way of guaranteeing, so another example of blind luck. Step 16, get Harry to Voldemort by touching the cup before all the other contestants, which relies on Harry surviving the entire tournament up to this point and touching the cup before any of the other contestants. Step 17, make sure that he doesn't escape because that would just be inconvenient, wouldn't it? Which doesn't work because Voldemort chooses to toy with Harry instead of outright killing him, which allows him the opportunity to escape, so Voldemort is now acting in defiance of his own plan. But other than that, makes perfect sense. Harry Potter and the
Goblet of Fire
is a strange one that I've gone up and down with over the years. I stopped reading the books at this point because I found this one a massive chore to get through, and originally I felt the same way about the film. Over time, I grew to appreciate it a bit more for its character development of Cedric and Harry, but now it's really not the best. The pacing is sluggish as hell, and the fact that they cut so much from the book means that when it's not focused on Harry or the tournament, it's just not that interesting. Harry Potter and the
Goblet of Fire
was not just another magical adventure. It was a cinematic rite of passage, with richer emotional depth, serious consequences, and a glimpse of the darkness to come. It proved that Harry Potter wasn't just a children's fantasy. It was a mythos that could mature, shock, and stir a generation. I'd say that it is a very average film before that third act with Voldemort. That pushes it over the edge for me and makes it a decent flick. It's worth watching for that climax alone.